I have in common with Walt Disney and Steve Jobs is, for all three of us, it started with a mouse. I'm Jeff Boer, and I'm a visual artist. When people say, well, what do you do for a living? Well, obviously I make museum-quality suits of armor for cats and mice. I've had this amazing lifetime fascination with history and, of course, armor. When I was growing up, my father was a sheet metal fabricator, so I had access to the tools and some knowledge. By the time I was in high school, I was actually building my first suit of armor. A few years after that, I was at the Alberta College of Art and Design in the jewelry department, and in 1986, I had this epiphany that my skill sets were now in this small scale, and I had this history with armor, and I realized that I could make a small suit of armor. So I thought, what's small? I could make a suit of armor for a mouse. So in 1986, my whole life changed. In my universe, it's really this world of exploring history as cats and mice as a metaphor or an analogy for human history. When do the mice rebel? When do the cats and mice work together? Do cats fight each other? Do mice fight each other? Those are the kinds of questions that I think my work provokes without me actually having to write that. If I'm going to start a mouse from scratch, the research, the tooling, and the design work will take between 30 and 50 hours before I start building a mouse. And then after that, the average time for a mouse will be between 35 and 60 hours to build. On social media, people say, oh, Jeff, you're so patient. But it's really about being in the moment and giving the love to something every single time. First, there's just sort of the rough idea in your head. Then do some concept drawings potentially, or do scale modeling. Quite often, I will just model in clay now to visualize the forms and start to draft patterns from that, and then start to make the parts. And if the parts fit, you keep going. If they don't fit, you draft the pattern and do that again. So it can be quite iterative. For the most part, I'm working in steel, brass, nickel, copper, fairly inexpensive materials. I'm happy to just charge by the hour for my work, and I think that's fair. So a suit of mouse armor can be $5,000, and a suit of cat armor can be $40,000 to $50,000. The kinds of people who are buying my work, I think, is just a huge spectrum. There are just what you call maybe ordinary people to celebrities. I think the one thing that most of them would have in common is they're probably interested in history and they're interested in art. And they also like to have something in their house that's meaningful, not just stuff. My work was never intended to actually be worn by a cat or a mouse. I think that people's imaginations do a much better job of that than you could ever do by actually doing it. When you first have your break in the art world and you become the cat and mouse guy, there's a fear that that's all you're ever going to be. And certainly I've gone on to do large public works, but the whole time I was coming back to doing a cat here or a mouse there. And now I'm really excited about maybe just focusing on the cat and mouse thing for the rest of my life. And the thing that's come to my mind is that all these years I thought I was making suits of armor for cats and mice, and it turns out they were making me.